80 to 90% of our clients end up going with a business that was in an industry that was never even on their radar.
Welcome, listeners, viewers, to another episode of Mastering E-commerce Marketing. We have Jon Ostenson here today. Jon is the founder and CEO of FranBridge Consulting. Jon, how are you?
Hey, Eitan, doing great. Appreciate you having me.
Wow, I'm so excited about our topic of the day, right? We're going to talk about all things franchising and specifically, you're right. I mean, this is something that you do and being very, very busy with and also very quite successful, although you manage and launch very successful company previously. So Jon, before we get started, I just want people to get to know you better. So if you can share with us 3 words that are probably representing you the best, both professionally or personally, and why.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd start out by saying driven. From a young age, I think for a variety of reasons, I've always wanted to achieve and to level up and to, really do my very best. And what goes behind that. Second would be balanced. I view everything through the lens of 5 domains, faith, family, and relationships, fitness, finances, and a lot of people would say business. I say franchising. So that's my 5F framework. And really, I think about my days that way, my quarters, years, and really want to stay balanced. And then the third one would be stewardship. I believe that to whom much is given, much is expected, whether it be resources, whether it be opportunity. I try to steward my family, try to steward my time, try to steward our resources and how we use those. So that's something that's very important to me, is that, we do for others, more than we do for ourselves, and we're good stewards of what we've been given.
Perfect. I love the driven part. I think it's something that you are probably remember since the day you remember yourself, right? It's something that you carry from very, very early. And probably balance is something you came later in life, right? When you try to figure out and learn more how to prioritize things in life. So I think it's a very, very, very good combination. So really thank you. Thank you for sharing those. So Jon, what originally drew you to the world of franchising?
Stumbled into it. Like so many of your listeners, when I heard the F word franchise, I thought of fast food, right? And that's what came to mind, and really had the opportunity. So I spent many years in the corporate world, had a great run, very thankful for it, got the MBA, checked all those boxes, but wanted to build my own thing, wanted to do something more entrepreneurial, didn't know what it looked like. And through some circumstances, had the opportunity to come in and serve as president of Shelf Genie franchise system, custom pull-out shelving for kitchens and pantries. So I came in, ran our home office, ran our marketing teams, our call center, our technology, our product development for about 100 franchisees across North America. And for me, that was the light bulb moment where I fell in love with the franchise model. Just saw how all these diverse backgrounds could come together under a shared system of support, and how we allowed, support these people in becoming business owners. So that was about, 9 or 10 years ago, about a decade ago. And since then have invested in franchises myself on the franchisee side, and also started my consulting practice to help others do the same.
Amazing. What's included in this term, right? I mean, how do you define it today?
Franchising, really, it's 3 basic things. It's a shared brand, but in a lot of these industries, it goes so much more than brand, right? So it's a shared brand. It's some form of support, coming from a home office or corporate location, and then some compensation going back for that support. That's really what a franchise is. And, there's just so many exciting models out there today, and everything from home and property services to health and wellness to categories like kids, pets, seniors, business to business services. So many things that oftentimes people don't have on their radar when they think about franchising. So I love getting out there and exposing people to these opportunities, and candidly, why so many of their friends and colleagues and neighbors and family are jumping in. I mean, we've never seen so much interest in franchising, and I love being a part of that.
You are focusing specifically on a non-food franchising, right? Because the first thing come to your mind is the food related industries, right? But is it only offline businesses, or some of them are online? Is it only physical goods, or maybe like digital services or services in general?
Great question. So first off, we've got nothing against the food guys. We need them, we support them, but for me, I felt like it made sense to go to the other half of the market, to go deeper. There's just easier ways to make money, in my humble opinion. Categories that may require fewer employees, less operating hours, higher margins, not having the brick and mortar retail base in some cases, right? I mean, some opportunities do, some don't. And they're less susceptible to consumer whims. Those are some of the reasons I like these other industries. When you dig into these others, I mean, a lot of them are, I'd say on average, they tend to be a little more tangible, oftentimes service related. In some cases, maybe there's a product complement, or I mentioned the pull out shelving for kitchen and pantries that I was part of. Ultimately, you call that product based, but it's also heavy service based, right? So a lot to kind of fit that mold, if you will. But I'd say it tends to be a little more services. I was just talking with a client a few minutes ago about a business coaching franchise. I had a call with another client this morning about a cost mitigation, you help small and medium sized businesses save costs. It's a very consultative type. And so you do have some of those B2B services as well. All of these have an online component, right? You're oftentimes entering fragmented, less sophisticated industries. And if you're coming in with a strong brand presence that's being represented online, but then also you're able to, the automated texting and the lead capture and the nurturing. I mean, these are things that oftentimes your competition's not doing that a franchise enables you to do, as well as just operating from a larger data set, because you've got all franchisees to have visibility into, helps you optimize and get to third base a lot faster than doing it on your own.
Yes, yes. Obviously, for founders or entrepreneurs out there, thinking of, okay, I want to launch something new, right? So they're thinking of, they need to build everything from scratch. But they obviously have this franchisee opportunity. What are some of the key, considerations that they need to have in mind, or what are some of the tips you can provide them to decide between starting something from scratch or maybe considering a franchisee opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. End of the day with the franchisor, you already want to be paying something back to the franchisor, right? But in most cases, these are things that you'd be paying for anyway, right? I mean, they'll set you up day one. You've got the website, you've got all the technology stack, you've got the marketing data, you've got a coach on the sidelines and that franchisor that's supporting you, right? You're in business for yourself, but not by yourself, to be cliche. But you also, and I know you'll appreciate this, you've got a built-in mastermind group of other people running the same business day in, day out in their respective geographies. And so again, you're learning from each other, growing together. So you've got a community, if you will. And again, you have larger marketing data sets. So you don't have to make the same mistakes over and over. So those are some of the kind of low-hanging fruit. Certainly there's a lot more to it. One other thing that we see is a lot of people reach out and say, hey, we're interested in buying an existing business, right? That's very common. That ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, is very popular out there. That can be a great proposition. But from where I sit, what I continue to see over and over and over is that people have been looking for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years for that needle in the haystack. And they finally come back to us and say, actually, that's time that's somewhat wasted. We could have started a franchise and been up and running and pretty far down the tracks by now. So it is a trade-off. And I remind them too, that if you were to buy an existing business, you're in business, by yourself. Whenever you have a change in ownership, you may lose key employees or key customers. I mean, those things happen. Here you paid a premium for that business, assuming everything was going to continue as is. So within franchising, oftentimes when you go to sell the business, it's sold to another franchisee in the system. That's very common, that internal M&A, because you get the first line of sight into these potential deals. Most of the good opportunities never even hit the open market. So it gives you an exit strategy as well as a potential acquisition strategy, buying other franchisees over time.
So usually those companies will have like a methodology, how to manage those franchisees, or you help them with this aspect as well. I mean, for the companies that want to find partners.
Yeah, so we work with about 600 different franchise companies, really most of those outside of food, most of those that are looking to expand, that still have good markets to expand into. And end of the day, our model is you never pay us a nickel. It's a great model. It's very much like a real estate model. If you were to go buy a house, that agent on the other side, the listing agent is going to get paid a referral fee. Your agent will as well, right? So we simply get a referral fee. None of that's passed on to our clients. So it's just a sales and marketing cost for them. So it's entirely free for our clients to hold their hand, take them through the process, help them identify the top dozen or so opportunities in their market. And here's a fascinating stat. I would say close to 80 to 90% of our clients end up going with a business that was in an industry that was never even on their radar. So oftentimes they don't know what they're looking for until it's right in front of them. And they look at their spouse and say, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And that's probably the value you provide, both sides, right? I mean, just, that's where he starts a lot of perspective, right? Yeah. So what are the most, let's say, important criteria that matter to them when they're evaluating, high quality franchise opportunities?
Yeah, franchising is just like every other industry. You've got really strong players that provide great support, and you've got some that don't, right? And I hate that, but that's true. Whenever you have a large group of companies in the industry, right? That's where we help them identify the strong ones. But things we're looking for, obviously the profit model's got to be there, right? You've got to have competitive advantages, tangible competitive advantages over the competition within that industry. But we put a lot of weight too on the leadership team. We want to see a good blend of not only industry experience, but also franchise experience represented on that team. So end of the day, there's a little bit of art, a little bit of science to this. We're working around what are the best territories and demographics, and is there a large enough addressable market? Will this be a good fit for that area? But we're also looking at, what's a good fit for you? Are you looking to run the business day to day, what we would call an owner operator? Or are you looking to run it with an executive model? And this is very common in franchising too. Some call it semi-passive, some call it semi-absentee. I think semi-involved is a better term. You still might be involved, but the idea is that you put a manager in place to run the day-to-day business, while you keep your W-2 job or focus on your existing business. Now that sounds great, right? But end of the day, it comes down to having the right operator running the business. If you don't have the right operator, you're going to find yourself leaning in until you do. But if you do have a good operator that's incentivized and driven, and you have a good franchisor on the sidelines, they can support that operator and be their go-to for most of their daily questions, allowing you to, again, focus on your main things. So that is one of the beautiful things of franchising. A lot of people will start out maybe a little more hands-on, but then over time, kind of step back and move on. I've got a lot of clients who'll come back and buy additional franchises, or they'll come back and buy additional locations, or start their own business, buy an existing business. So I always encourage people, what's right for the next season, what's going to provide that platform that you can build off of.
Yes. So you mentioned this own and operate or own and semi-operate. That's a great start. What are some of the most important things that you see for a successful transaction, a franchise transaction right now?
Yeah, I think, you want to be well capitalized, right? It's not, in a lot of cases, you don't need extensive capital. It just depends on the type of the business. There are heavy CapEx businesses, ones that aren't. Banks prefer lending to franchises. So it is very common to use, like in the US, an SBA loan. Other countries have their own form of that. But because it's a little more predictable, it's usually not that hard to get funding. There's also the potential to use an older retirement plan, like one from a previous employer. You can roll that over through what's called the ROBS program, ROBS. So I'd say the funding side of it, I think, just thinking through, some people want to be passionate about the opportunity that they get into. Others say, hey, I'll if I can make $1 million a year in this dumpster business, I'll take that on you. And people do tend to kind of, these days I'm seeing it, smart money is going after things that are less sexy. I kind of joke, non-sexy is the new sexy when it comes to business ownership. So it is things that are, whether it be flooring, insulation, things that aren't going out of style that people are always going to need. I always say that people will always spend on their health, their kids, their pets, to some degrees, their homes. And so what are those businesses? They're always going to be around. The AI can enhance, maybe for a lead generation standpoint, for a truck routing standpoint, let's say, where it gives you a leg up on the competition. But industries where AI is, at least as far as we can imagine it, isn't going to take the place of
Yes.
someone in the business.
Yes, just going to this blue collar kind of thing. I'm going back to basics and just figure out what AI cannot do. This, human to human connections. And again, we're social creatures, right? So definitely it has a lot of influence on businesses. So on the other hand, what are some of the mistakes that you see that entrepreneurs are doing, when they're approaching or even considering, your franchise business?
Yeah, I think sometimes, that it's just going to be easy, right? Franchising provides training wheels, but you still have to have someone riding the bike. And, it's not totally turnkey. If it was easy, everyone would be a business owner, right? Everyone would be a franchise owner. It does take work. There's a reason why you can make an outsized return on your investment. It's because there is some degree of involvement with the business. And so I never want to sugarcoat it. I tell our clients over and over, whoever is running that day to day has to be, if it's not you, it has to be someone that you trust, someone that you incentivize. So I'd say, just thinking that it's going to be easy, maybe one mistake people make. Another is, timing is never going to be right to buy a business, right? Stars will never perfectly align. It's the entrepreneurs, it's the people that take a step and anyway, right? But I think, there are a lot of people out there that consume content, that listen to podcasts, that think about business ownership, but they never actually take a step. It's just kind of on the sidelines. And then maybe once they get it and get into it, they're like only one toe in. I'd say, if you're going to do it, do it. Just look at the vast number of case studies of those that have gone before you that have done it. Go in confidently, leverage the franchise system, milk it for all it's worth and get involved, form relationships. Either do it or don't go in halfway.
Yes, yes. So for business owners who are thinking about franchising their company, what must be in place, before they even consider expansion?
Yeah. You want to, it's got to be an attractive profit model, and you want to make sure you have a good team around you that can support franchisees, that you're ready for it. Last thing you want to do is invite people into your business to become franchisees and not be ready to support them, not have the infrastructure. So, there's some basic building blocks. I'm always happy to talk to any of your listeners about it, but you want to have, the expectations these days are that you're going to have some form of lead generation on the marketing side to support franchisees. You'll have some warm up technology stack to hand off, some sort of training that you're going to provide. And end of the day, the better the franchisee does, the more money you make too. So you do have aligned interest there. So I'd say just making sure you're giving good checks to each of those boxes would be where you would start. There are a lot of ways to expand. Franchising's right for some businesses. It's not for others. I think it can make a lot of sense. If you're looking to have an exit down the road, or, private equity loves franchising, absolutely loves it. We get calls all the time. A franchise that I'm involved in, private equity is wanting to get involved. So they love the business model behind franchising. But again, you've got to be ready to support those franchisees. Last thing you want to do is invite people in and not be ready. All of a sudden you're going to have kids with expectations of you that you're not able to fulfill. One other point that I'd make, Aiden, about existing business owners, a lot of times they say, how can I expand my business? Should I add a revenue stream? Franchising can make a lot of sense for them. In some cases, they're too entrepreneurial. They don't want to stay within the lines. Franchising is not a good fit. But what I found is for many business owners, we've had a lot of clients that are existing business owners get involved. Oftentimes they appreciate everything that a good franchise system provides because they remember all the hard work they went to last go round. So we do work with a lot of existing business owners that say, hey, we'd love to find a business that either complements our business or maybe diversifies from it.
Yes. Oh, it's really super interesting. And John, in your model, are you just obviously you are making the introduction, facilitating the transaction? What happens after? Are you involved also in coaching for success, for just managing work and the execution side?
I love staying in touch with clients, and but I really put the ball in their court as to how involved, or how. I always say, hey, we want to hear about your milestones. So if we have questions we can help with. But for the most part, there's a passing of the baton to the franchisor from a support standpoint. Once they sign that franchise agreement, they're moving forward. The franchisor is going to take them through training. They've got their whole program that the franchisees getting involved in. So I never want to overstep. So I'd say they're the ones. But however, I can be a resource on the sidelines after the fact, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever and I'm sure you did, right? I mean, just approach companies that never thought about franchise opportunity as a growth vehicle for their business, and been able to show them the benefits, and was also a great case study for you.
Oh yeah, I've had a number of company that typically they reach out to me. I don't reach out to them. I don't have the bandwidth, or that's not me. I never cold call or anything like that. But they'll reach out to me and say, hey, John, would love to consider franchising. Does it make sense? And I'll share with them my experience. I've been on both sides of the table, right? And in some cases, I'm like, you're not ready, or this doesn't make sense. Because I know what the landscape looks like. I know what potential buyers are for, right? But in some cases, I'm like, yeah, you could franchise it. It makes a lot of sense. You could also expand this way. So I love having those strategy conversations. Because I do think if you're a company that's got a good model that's highly profitable and it is the type of business that makes sense, franchising should be on your radar as one path to at least consider.
Yes. So you're evaluated by the, let's say, maturity of the company, by the niche, right? I mean, is it changing and trending over time? Obviously,
It's a question. No, and I love how you said that. I think Absolutely. People, riches in the niches, right? People love niches. We don't need another mosquito company. There's already a bunch of those. We don't need another home cleaning business. There's already a bunch of those. What we need are the niches. Like for me, some of the ones I'm invested in, I've got an asphalt paving and line striping business. It's parking lots, B2B. I've got, non-sexy as they come, right? Got another one that provides temporary walls, like containment walls around renovation projects and construction sites. As far as I know, we're the only ones in franchising doing that. So we love niches like that. And it doesn't all have to, I keep using property services examples. But I just had a client that opened up, business in the health and wellness space. He's doing 5 locations. I went to his grand opening a couple of weeks ago for the first one. They provide infrared saunas and cold plunges and red light beds and compression therapy and injections all under one roof. And it's a membership model, whereas other players in the space are largely doing 1 or 2 things. Oh, they also have cryotherapy, which I took the son into. Goes into that. That was a lot of fun. But we love niches out there, and there's so many. So that's one of the things I love most about my job is just seeing the types of businesses that are getting involved in franchising, how they resonate with others. So I'd say the niches are important. And then I think you also mentioned,
Like the maturity of the company, right?
the maturity. So certainly, yeah, if you just started the business in the past year, it's probably not ready to be franchised, right? Like you can give it a little bit of time. In some cases, a business may have multiple locations. That's ideal because you've already proven out that it works well in different geographies. In other cases, you may just have that corporate location, but there's enough belief behind how you do things that it's going to be, replicable, and you've got systems in place and such. So, certainly the longer you've been in business, the longer track record, the more likely someone's going to want to say, hey, I'll pay you to become a franchisee of your system.
Yes, yes. So I want to talk to you about how these companies are just protecting their franchisee or the partners. I mean, if you're in a brick and mortar store, I think it makes sense. It's very clear. But if you're in a service or an online business, how do you prevent? I mean, there is a substantial investment up front. How do you protect, these partners, from competition in their area? What are the usual terms involved?
Okay, absolutely. So let's just say you're in-home senior care or you're a, gutter company, roofing company. Typically in a service-based business, it would be territory-based, and a territory may be 250,000 in population. The franchisors have the software subscriptions where they can see the demographic information at the zip code levels. They would help you construct a territory, maybe even multiple territories, right? And then those are protected. So they would not have another franchisee that they would allow in there. And so, a lot of it now is very automated from a marketing standpoint. Someone calls in from this zip code, it's recognized and, routed to you. A lot of the software handles that. Some of them have an in-house call center too, supporting, if you have a neighboring franchise, there may be cases where you want to operate the job in theirs or vice versa. And you just work that out on the front end that, hey, when that happens, who gets the referral fee? How does that work? If they arrive at that. So no, it's pretty straightforward.
Interesting. So this is well structured, and just the tools that need to be in place, right, or just to manage this on an ongoing basis. Can you give us a sense about the terms of these type of deals? Let's say you can choose maybe 2 or 3 different categories or niches, and just explain, the upfront kind of investment, the ongoing rev shares, how these are usually been structured.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some clients that are getting into things well into the 7 figures, but I'd say in a lot of cases, especially these service-based businesses, when you look at the franchise fee and your startup cost and several months of working capital, all built in, just your all-in investment range, oftentimes you're in the 100,000 to 400,000 ballpark. Quite a few things within that. Maybe let's just call it 200,000. I think that's a good kind of central point that a lot of things are hitting. All-in investment. So your 200,000 is probably 50,000 franchise fee for the rights to the territory. You would have, some startup costs and, maybe some systems that you purchased or technology or vehicle. And then you're going to have some working capital built into. So let's just call it 200,000 all in investment. Some businesses, you may be profitable day one or within the first 3 months. A lot of businesses, I'd say it's probably that 6-month period where, a lot of them average. Some may take longer. And I always want people to be conservative, as far as the run rate goes. But I think of one that system, this is a property services business we placed probably 10 clients with. So I know the numbers off the back of my hand. You can get all in for about 200,000. And I've had clients that have actually done $1 million in the first year with this one, but let's just assume you get to that at some point in year 2. So if you're doing $1 million, they kick off about 25% to the bottom line, which is on the higher side. A lot of franchises maybe more like 15%. Let's say 25%. So you're dropping, in that case, very healthy margin. So on $1 million business, 250 of the bottom line, where all investment was 200,000. That's a great return, right? But there's also effort that goes into that business, right? You're running a business or you're paying someone to do it. So you can make outsized returns for sure. You're also building an asset that you'll be able to sell one day. So you're not just buying a job, you're building an asset. The third piece, is the tax benefits that come with business ownership. I mean, the tax code, at least here in the U.S., was written to favor business owners because they want you creating jobs. They want you spurring the economy. So it just opens up the playbook of what you can do from a tax standpoint. So oftentimes I have clients that say, hey, I'm making $200,000 with my W-2 job. If I can only do $100,000 a year one with a franchise, knowing that there's upside from there, how should I think about it? I'm like, well, you're comparing apples to oranges. Again, you're building an asset and you get tax benefits. So it's not always perfectly comparable.
Yes. There is also an ongoing rev share component usually.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yep, meant to mention that. So typically in the 6 or 7% range, it's what's called a royalty, and you're paying that back to the franchisor. So 6 to 7% of revenue. And that's already a bit be able to support you with the team at the home office and all the things that they do on your behalf. Now, as you're evaluating franchises, you want to ask, what am I getting tangibly for that 6 or 7%, right? It's they should be able to articulate the value that they're providing in exchange for that. And so when I mentioned the 25% margin, that would be net of the 6 or 7%, right? That's already taken out.
So if an entrepreneur is reaching out to you and say, hey, I'm interested in this business model, where do we start? I mean, how do we evaluate? How do we research the market? Let's say he's a niche agnostic, right? We help them out, just figure out what works best for them, what do you typical process?
Yeah, we would jump on an introductory call. I'd ask some leading questions, get to know them, share a little bit about what we're seeing out there. And then I would come back to them. We'd have them fill out kind of the basic form on our end. I'd currently share a copy of our book, Non-Food Franchising, with them. But then I'd come back to them and say, hey, if I were in your shoes, here are the top 10 opportunities, give or take, that are looking to expand into your market that still have good availability that I think you should consider. Here's a little bit about each one. They would pick several to then have a conversation with. That gives us kind of a starting point. We can always pivot off of that. But then I kind of hold their hand with touch-base calls and serve as a resource throughout the exploration process, helping them to that point of eventually deciding if they want to move forward.
Wow, nice. So that's a lot of value, right, that you provide in the process.
A lot of perspective. And again, it's entirely free to work with us. We get a referral fee on the back end. None of that's passed on.
All right. So you showed the book. So let's talk about the book. Tell us more.
Yeah, no, it came out just over 3 years ago. Non-Food Franchising, about 90 pages. We have an audio version as well and a soft copy, PDF version. Certainly, you can buy from Amazon. All the profits or proceeds from the book go to Hope International, which is a great nonprofit that we support. But certainly, if you'd rather get a free copy like a lot of people do, just come out to our website, FranBridgeConsulting.com, and we'll email over some downloadable copy options for you. But no, try to pack as much content as we could into 90 pages. Most people read it by the time we get on the phone. It's just very understandable. And it really helps you connect the dots and fill in the gaps maybe in your understanding of franchising. I talk about client case studies. We talk about the financials. We talk about how to fund the business. We talk about the different industries out there, how to evaluate a franchise, how franchises compare to startup, how franchises compare to existing businesses that you could purchase. So again, try to educate as much as we could.
Yes. So, Jon, what are some of the mistakes that you see, both sides are doing in a transaction that, didn't work?
Yeah, I think newer franchisors oftentimes get excited at the first people that raise their hand and say, we want to buy your franchise. So I think they need to be more, really conservative and take your time, bring on the right people, in your franchise system. So I'd say that's a common pitfall, maybe growing too fast. I think that, you got to make sure you don't put the cart before the horse, grow methodically. On the franchisee side, I think it's falling in love with the industry rather than the opportunity. Or like we said earlier, I think some people will go into it and say, this must be easy because it's a franchise. It's not going to take much work. And the fact is, it still takes
enough.
Nothing's truly passive. Your competition's not passive, right?
Yeah. Hey, Jon, so where people can find you?
Yeah, come out to our website, franbridgeconsulting.com, FRAN bridgeconsulting.com. Share your email address. We'll reach out to you again with the ability, some links to download the book. And, if you'd like to take a next step, just indicate back in that email that you'd like to jump on a call, and I'd be happy to talk with any of your listeners, and we'll see where it goes.
In fact, Jon, anything else you want to add?
I think we hit on everything. No, appreciate a great conversation here, Aiden, and again, more than happy to help.
Sounds great, Jon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.